Tonight, it's all about the Ducks. Grab a drink and join us on tonight's Tailgate. Thanks for joining us on tonight's Tailgate. As always, I'm Luke. I'm joined with Dennis and Michael over here.
Hello, hello.
And today we have a special guest, Zachary Neel. He's a USA Today beat reporter covering the Oregon Ducks. Thanks for joining us, Zachary.
How you guys doing? Appreciate it.
Doing well.
Good,
How are you?
Doing well, man. A lot of fun. We got spring football here. We had pro day today. We got spring practice in 2 days. I'm excited.
Yeah. There's always something good going on in college football.
Oh, yeah.
Even
especially
in the off season.
Yeah, spring is awesome. I love spring. I don't know if you look forward to the spring scrimmage as much as I do. I love seeing what teams are coming up with in the off season.
I was just saying earlier we taped a podcast right before this. We're just saying that spring, I think, is arguably one of my favorite times for football because it's just so new. It's so fresh. There's new players, new coaches, new positions, new numbers. It's like, man, this is when you learn about your team. It's so fun.
Yep. Yeah. It's like that first day of Christmas. You're opening up all the new gifts and seeing what you got.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, so let's just hop into it. Coaching wise, not a whole lot of coaches. I know Oregon's promoted some guys, but what's the big news with the coaching going on with Oregon?
It feels like for the first time since the Dan Lanning era began, 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago now, this is the most stability they've had going into a season. The last 2 years they've had coordinators leave, offensive line coaches leave, defense coaches leave, and they really didn't have that attrition this offseason. We didn't have Kenny Dillingham go take a job at ASU. They had Will Stein stay here. This is the first time in I don't know how long that they've had an offensive coordinator for more than 1 year. And it's, the coaching staff feels like it's in a really good spot, which I think is really important when you get to this day and age of college football, when there's so much roster attrition and so much turnover, that when you have coaches staying in the same spot for more than 1-2 years at a time, it just gives fans that much more, comfortability going into a season.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, man, as someone that's an SEC fan, I know this. I've got a Clemson cup sitting right here. That's because we had a previous guy on earlier, and and I just wanted to troll him a little. I'm just kidding. No, I'm a Tennessee fan, and so I love watching Dan Lanning coach. I think you guys scored a huge win with him, and I personally think that I just looking at what Oregon's going to be walking into this next year and stuff like that, I think you guys have a ton to be excited about, especially since your arch rival DeBoer is not going to be in.
Yeah, had to bring up that name, huh?
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? He's at a rival school for us now, so
have fun.
We will.
No, it feels like Dan Lanning's approval rating is as high as it's ever been right now, and maybe as high as it ever will be, unless he brings that elusive national championship to Oregon, which I honestly do think he would do at some point. But just what he's done, what he's said, need a little bit more proof on the field. Obviously, they don't have the conference championships to boast about yet, but I think that is coming. But he's said and done everything off the field to a point where the love from the Oregon fan base right now is like something we've never seen before, because there have been, different coaches to come through the door and leave the door over the past few years, and he's kind of put an end to that for the time being, it seems. And Oregon fans are really, they're not shy to express their adoration for him, because he seems to be doing things in a new way that's really appreciated in Eugene.
Yeah, he definitely. It was nice to see him come out really quickly when Saban retired and just say, "Yep, nope, I'm staying put."
He spoke within 24 hours. He didn't wait at all.
It was within a day that he said, "No, I'm staying put," and I think that was great for Oregon. I think that was great for college football, to be honest with you.
Well, and the fact that it's not just that he came out and said, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay here." The fact that he was able to turn that whole thing into a magnificent recruiting pitch, saying, "Not only am I not leaving, but if you're afraid that your coach is leaving, you should come here."
Right.
And they got one of Washington's best players in Jabbar Muhammad.
They did.
Their quarterback came to Oregon. It's like, okay, this is what he had planned. So it's one of those things where he seems to be really good at what he does.
Yeah. Speaking of the players that they're getting, they've done really well with the portal this year. Maybe not necessarily in numbers, but in the players that they're getting. especially those two quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore, right? So what are your thoughts on just the players that have come in, some of the players maybe that have left? Like what's going on through your head with all that?
Well, just to start with the transfer portal, like you said, they didn't do a ton of numbers this year because I don't think they needed to. The first couple of years Lanning was here, we saw them bring in, almost 20 or more transfers per year just because they didn't have the level of talent on the roster that he, felt satisfied with. So he went and got his own players, brought him in. He's recruited at such a high level over the past couple of years, back-to-back top 10 classes, top 4, top 5 classes last year. He doesn't need to bring in that, that quantity in the transfer portal. He went for quality. So they got 11 transfers in this year, all of whom, I think most of whom will probably be starters. You asked about Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore. I don't know if there's there's maybe a couple other quarterback classes or quarterback rooms in the nation that compare with Oregon. You look at maybe Texas, like you can count on one hand the number of the quarterback situations you'd rather have than Oregon with. Dylan Gabriel, very, very talented, experienced player. Dante Moore, former 5-star recruit, number 3 quarterback in his class last year. So, they're built for success this year with Gabriel likely getting that starting job. We'll see if Dante Moore can push him for that job this spring. But then, Dante Moore has said on record before he's okay with waiting in the wing and growing and developing and taking over next year. So they're really set up for the present and the future, which is a really nice place to be in.
Nice.
Cool. So what are your beliefs on what do you think is going to be the kind of the with this transition to the Big Ten and the fact that you're going to have a lot more arguably higher quality opponents this upcoming year? What do you think is going to be kind of your is going to like the teams that are going to become kind of your new major rivals since you're kind of, since Pac-12 has absolved, or has been dissolved, not absolved. What am I talking about? But like, who do you think is going to become your new rivals? And going into this year, how much of a struggle do you think you're going to see Oregon with a kind of a change that they're going to have to play against completely different play styles in the Big Ten?
It's really interesting because, like you said, it feels like the talent level at the top of the conference is getting much better than it was in the Pac-12. But I feel like the depth is not there in the Pac-12. I mean, in the Pac-12 year after year, you had to deal with your USCs, your Washingtons, your Utahs at the top. Those are not Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. I think that that the Big Ten teams are better. But you also had to deal with your Washington States, your Arizona States that could knock you off any. I mean,
the underdog ones.
Those are better than your Purdue, your Illinois, your Indiana. So it's like it's kind of a give and take a little bit.
Any day of the week.
Yeah, just a little bit. So I mean, going into the Big Ten, like we've said before a little bit earlier, like Oregon has history against Ohio State. It's not a great history unless you want to count that one win in 2021, which is their only win in the 10-game series against Ohio State, and they lost the national championship to them. But they've got that history there. There's part of a rivalry, at least the beginnings of a rivalry there.
Sure.
You've got history against Michigan. You've got history against Michigan State. Way back in 1995, you lost a Rose Bowl to Penn State. So these are teams that, you do see buddings of a rivalry if they're able to play some meaningful games going forward. And, one of the most important things about building a rivalry is actual competitive games going forward. So, I actually argued a couple of weeks ago that I think that Oregon's rivalry against Washington is going to take a little bit of a step back over these next few years because Washington is going in a different direction right now than Oregon is. And so when Oregon gets introduced to these yearly games against Ohio, well, not yearly, I wish they were yearly.
Yeah, me too.
Games against Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, that Washington game's going to fall to the back burner a little bit because that's kind of penciled in as a win a little bit more than it's not. So, I'm really looking forward to that Ohio State game this year. Michigan, obviously, I think Wisconsin, a great history against them. We've got a couple of Rose Bowl victories over them in the last decade. Those are the teams that I really have circled that I could see big rivalries against going forward.
Cool. Nice. With all of those things that you were just talking about, like one of the things that I think is going to be like super interesting to see is like how your rivalry that's now not in your conference, your Oregon State rivalry, how that continues to be a dominant rivalry for you guys, even though it's going to be out of conference now. Like, have people started trying to downplay that because it's now not a conference game, or what are you hearing from the rumblings over there in Oregon?
That's been really interesting to see over the past, however how many months that it came out that was going to be still a game going on, but not the conference game, because like I said, you want competition on both sides for there to be a great rivalry. I don't think there's going to be as much because Oregon State, like Washington, kind of going in the wrong direction right now. But I was talking to my co-host on the Sco-ing Long Podcast, Jonathan Stewart, who was obviously a former Oregon running back, about that and what his thoughts on were about that. And he's like, you know what? That's one of those rivalries where, he was part of a stretch in Oregon history where they won 12 years in a row. I mean, and he said that was still one of the games every year that they went up and they wanted to win that game more than anything else, just because of the in-state rivalry aspect of it. I mean, those two campuses are 40 minutes apart on the freeway here. So
can't sleep on it.
Yeah, there is still that aspect that you want to go out there and beat them. So I think that, it'll be tough to see because Oregon State's in a tough spot right now as far as, everything going on, obviously. So I think the rivalry might lose a little bit of juice compared to what it was last couple of years. Obviously, they upset Oregon in 2022, which was a big deal. But it's still going to be really important. That's part of the, that's ingrained in the Oregon life out here. I mean, it's always played on Thanksgiving weekend. So you've got Ducks and Beavers and the family sharing dinner together, sitting at a table together and hating each other's guts. So that's one of those things that's not going to change.
Hopefully not through the whole meal.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can take a little break and be thankful for each other. But
it's called halftime.
Exactly.
That's where you break the bone, right?
Exactly.
So what strides are you hoping that Oregon takes this next year? Like from either like coaching maturity, just if there are particular positions that you're really hoping to see take a step forward in the right direction this year?
Well, so two different things. I mean, as far as coaching maturity, one of the biggest knocks on Dan Lanning is that he's been a little overly aggressive in his 2 years. Sure. And, he does a lot of fourth down decisions, like that he goes for it. He's definitely aggressive. I'm of the camp that he needs more of a sample size before we start knocking him on these. I mean, I think there was probably 4 or 5 50-50 decisions that he made this last year that, on fourth down. Most of them, I think 4 or 5 of them went against him. Yeah. It's like, if one of those or 2 of those go the opposite way, we're talking about him a very different way. So I'm curious to see how he stays true to his coaching nature, if that makes sense. If he, if these things keep going against him, is he ever going to change? Not that I think he should. It's just something I can't wait to watch from the outside.
Yeah. I honestly don't think he will, just because with Dylan Gabriel being his quarterback.
I don't think
Dylan Gabriel himself is a risk taker, so
exactly.
He just feeds into it.
I know the guy. I've spent a couple of years around Dan Lanning. That's who he is on and off the field. I mean, he is an aggressive guy. He's energetic, and it makes sense that he is the Dan Campbell of the NCAA. Like it's just who he is. So as far as coaching goes, that's what I want to see this year and the next couple of years as they go in the Big Ten. When you look at taking strides on the roster, they've done a really good job in the transfer portal this year of addressing the secondary. They had some trouble with safety help last year. Obviously, we saw that in the 2 games against Washington. They got beat deep a lot, and they were just unable to cover against teams like Washington that had so many NFL caliber receivers. So they addressed that, and they got some really good safeties out of transfer portal this year. We'll see how they stack up defensively up in the front 7 with the new physicality of the Big Ten. I think they've recruited at a high level and recruited the type of bodies that can match up with that.
Sure.
But those are just a couple of things to watch going forward.
Sure. Who do you think when you're looking at this Oregon team, who is your player that you're like, I'm excited to see this guy play, whether it be somebody that you think's gonna kind of have a standout year, or you know where I'm going?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I got a name for you.
Sure.
Linebacker Justin Jacobs.
Okay.
He came over from Iowa last year. He came in the transfer portal. He was hurt at Iowa his last year. He missed the first half of the season last year just because he had a knee injury early on. Yep. But he presents a mold of linebacker that Oregon just hasn't seen in a long time. I think I don't have it off the top of my head. I think he's 6'2", 6'3", like 230, 240.
Yeah, I've got 6'4", 245.
Perfect. Yes, even bigger than I was saying. Oregon doesn't have those linebackers routinely, and he's quick despite his size. He's physical. He just kind of presents that Big Ten nature. I feel like he knows what it's like playing at Iowa. I think he's going to have a huge year for them if he can stay healthy and play a full season. We saw him; he was really good when he was on the field. They just missed him for half the year. So I think last year maybe a little bit different if he was there, but he's someone that I'm really looking forward to seeing this year.
If you're going to get a player from Iowa, might as well be on the defense.
Yeah, better
not be
teams.
offense.
That's
No,
really
you don't want their offense. But yeah, no, that's a huge win. Like you're getting anybody from there, especially their defensive secondary, who when we were doing our like end of the year like our end of the year like tailgate like teams, like the team that we were picking, like we were picking different position parts, and we were in between. Was it Michigan and Iowa secondary as the best that like because they're just good. They're just stupid good. So
I mean the proof is in the pudding. Year after year, Iowa's defense is one of the best in the conference, one of the best in the nation. I mean, they have to be if Kirk Ferentz can do this job for 2 decades and score less than 10 points a game. That defense better be really good.
I think like recently, I'm trying to remember which article they ranked like one of the best teams to have, or one of the better college teams played for in the past 2 decades, and it's just because of their defense.
Wow.
Yeah,
like
it's remarkable what they can do.
Sure. Now, so heading into next year, okay, you're going into the Big Ten. You've got games with Ohio State, Michigan. You mentioned Wisconsin, Washington. When you're looking through that schedule, I mean, it really is kind of a gauntlet. You get a little bit of a break, but what are you thinking when you look at that schedule? Are you coming out? What are your projections?
I'm thinking that I'm really happy that the Ohio State game is in Eugene.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if that was in Columbus, I mean, they won in Columbus last time they played there. I don't know how they did it. I was at that game. It was incredible, especially when you consider, I think Oregon fans, like maybe all due respect to him, maybe their least favorite quarterback over the last decade was Anthony Brown. And he's the one that went in there and beat Ohio State in Columbus. I still don't know how they did it without Kayvon Thibodeau too.
Right.
Remarkable that they were able to win that game. But no, like you said, I mean, Ohio State's obviously the biggest game of the year. That's win or lose that game. If they lose that game, it's not like this season is a disappointment. They can lose that game and still make it to the Big Ten championship, make the college football playoff. But if you win that game, man, it's going to be pretty hard for the season not to be a massive success.
Oh yeah.
The Washington game, we will see what they look like under Jed Fish. They aren't going to be the same Washington team we saw this last year, obviously. Michigan, you can say the same thing. We'll see. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh gone. I still think they're a very talented roster. Sharon Moore, very good coach. We'll see what they look like this year. Wisconsin, still a big question mark for me. I have all the faith in the world in Luke Fickell. We'll see what Tyler Van Dyke could do. But, I think that the top of the conference is very clearly defined in Oregon and Ohio State.
Yeah.
I think there's possibilities that could be one of 2 Oregon-Ohio State games, maybe even one of 3 Oregon-Ohio State games in the year. So
I mean, Ohio State does end up choking when it comes to big games, so we'll see. They might change the Michigan game for the Oregon one, man.
So does Oregon, though. We've lost a few big games over the last decade too.
I'm trying to root for the old Pac teams. I have an allegiance to them, even if it doesn't exist no more.
Yeah, I feel you.
So before we let you go tonight, and again, we appreciate you hopping on here with us. What is your prediction for this season? If you had to pick a record, what do you think your record's going to be at the end of this season? I
think they are 11-1 going into the conference championship game. I think they beat everyone but Ohio State.
Okay.
I honestly think, it's tough. I could see them beating Ohio State. They're
Sure.
as good as Ohio State, but you kind of got to give a little bit of love to the reigning Big Ten,
They're
dominance.
stacked. They're stacked this year.
Yeah.
They're good. I mean, they're both teams are really good.
You don't have to say that just because he's here.
I
know.
I'll cover.
But no, I think Ohio State wins that game in Eugene. I think the 2 meet again in the Big Ten championship. I think they both end up making it to the college football playoff. I don't really know what happens from there because it's all going to be
You guys
crazy.
probably have to play Alabama.
Probably will.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun to have a 3 regular
Especially the
season, a
first-
Big Ten conference, and a national championship game
I mean,
against Oregon.
we've never seen that before with any
Nope.
teams,
Mm-mm.
right?
No.
That's not hasn't been possible
It's
before.
never been happening.
Nope.
I don't think it's been possible. I don't know how that math works.
Yeah,
out.
it wouldn't have been possible
But,
before, but yeah, now it'd be really cool to
That-
see it happen.
That would be awesome. I would really love that.
Just a whole Big Ten, everything.
It in Love Fest.
Yep, sure.
Featuring
and,
the SEC.
I mean, I'll just be rooting for somebody.
Yeah.
I'll find somebody to root for.
Yeah.
Well, again, before we let you go, can you just let our followers know where they can find you and follow you at?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Zachary C. Neel. I write for USA Today, a site called duckswire.usatoday.com. I've got a podcast, the Sco-ing Long Podcast with Jonathan Stewart, former Oregon running back, former Pro Bowl running back with the Carolina Panthers. We've got all our stuff. Spring football starting this week, so we've got a lot of stuff up right now.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks so much, and we'll try to get you back on later this season just to see what's just get an update and stuff
Maybe
like
after
that.
that Oregon-Ohio State game.
Absolutely.
we'll touch back.
Anytime, man. I'm happy to come on. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Zachary.